want to do a quick video about UK knife laws and susceptibility to having knives confiscated. As you may have seen in earlier videos, I had a couple of knives swiped by the customs, and when I referred to this in the video, there was a few comments to the effect that I think those knives are UK legal, and I did myself, and it turns out that they are legal to own, but that's not the basis, or rather they weren't confiscated because they're not legal to own. Now what I got was seizure notice, and basically it says that 2 flick knives and 1 gravity knife were taken, and through the text it refers to these pieces of legislation down here: Section 141 of the Criminal Justice Act, Section 141 of the Customs and Excise Management Act, Section 167 of the Customs and Excise Management Act, Section 139 of the same, and paragraphs 3 to 6 inclusive of Schedule 3 of the Customs and Excise Management Act. Now, done a bit of homework and had a look through, and none of those pieces of legislation say anything about what is or isn't a flick knife or a gravity knife. So I did a bit more digging about, and I think I found something that anybody who's thinking of sending knives in and out of the UK, or maybe in line for a gift to arrive from outside the UK, or if you're entering YouTube competitions, this could affect you. Now obviously I'm not a lawyer, and if you need legal advice you can rely on, then you need to get it from somebody qualified. However, I do believe that what I've found is relevant, and that's why I'm making the video. So I had a look on the Home Office website, and they refer to another piece of legislation that wasn't in that letter, and that is the Restriction of Offensive Weapons Act 1959. Very short piece of legislation. Well, this chapter 37 is very short. Part 1 basically says that any person who manufactures, sells, hires, or offers for sale or hire, or lends or gives to another person any knife which has a blade which opens automatically by hand pressure applied to a button, spring, or other device in or attached to the handle, sometimes known as a flick knife or a flick gun, or any knife which has a blade which is released from the handle or sheath thereof by the force of gravity or the application of centrifugal force, and which, when released, is locked in place by means of a button, spring, lever, or other device, sometimes known as a gravity knife. Now, this appears to be where the official definitions of gravity knives and flick knives are enshrined. And the important thing to remember is not to get into discussions about what the words are supposed to mean or what they were originally intended to mean. All you can do is take the words literally as they are. Now bear in mind that the 3 knives, 2 I think were assisted opening and 1 was a flipper, although it may be the other way around. And if we look again at the words in the legislation, they are saying that a flick knife is any knife which has a blade which opens automatically by hand pressure applied to button, spring, or other device in or attached to the handle of the knife. If you open the knife by flipping the blade out, you've opened it by hand pressure applied to an other device in or attached to the handle. The blade itself is a device attached to the handle, literally. Whether it was ever intended to mean that is irrelevant. That's what the words say. Similarly, the next paragraph, any knife which has a blade which is released from the handle or sheath thereof by the force of gravity or the application of centrifugal force. Now if you look at flipper, centrifugal force is involved. It's not the entire mechanism for opening the knife, because you have to push the flipper to start with, but it's involved, and therefore I think that unfortunately the official definitions of flick knives and gravity knives, even though assisted openers and flippers aren't what was originally understood by a gravity knife or a flick knife, they are rather covered by this wording. Part 2 of this is the killer. The importation of any such knife as is described in the foregoing subsection is hereby prohibited. So my conclusion is, whilst yes they are legal to own, there's nothing in the Criminal Justice Act Offensive Weapons Order 1988 that prohibits you owning flippers and or assisted openers. As a private individual, their importation is prohibited. Now, it does say that the person who manufactures, sells or hires or offers for sale or hire or lends or gives to another person commits the offence, but it does mean that they're going to get seized. I didn't know this previously, and obviously if you're buying from a company like Heinnie Haynes is the obvious one, businesses are going to be, I would imagine, governed by different rules and regulations. There'll be import, export licenses, etc. But as a private citizen, even though you're allowed to own and in some circumstances carry a flipper or an assisted opening knife, you're not allowed to bring one through the customs into the UK. So, regrettably, I've had to conclude that whilst it was annoying to have the knives seized, even though none of the reasons in this letter constitute a valid reason, there is a piece of legislation which is still in effect and has not been amended, which does give Her Majesty's Customs and Excise the right to nick your knives. So, as I say, bear that in mind. Just because it's legal to own them doesn't mean it's legal to bring them into the country, and you need to be wary if you're thinking of, as I say, entering a competition, doing a trade, buying a knife. You could be open to the same disappointment that I felt. So, I hope you found that interesting. I hope it's useful. I'll see you next time.